Most music schools don't have a budget to hire publicists, but on this episode, we're teaching you how to do that job yourself. Mandy and I talk about how to get your studio in the newspaper, on television, and other media outlets, and we're breaking down all of the steps, what makes a story newsworthy, how to build relationships with journalists, and why publicity can be far more beneficial than paid advertising. All on this episode of Rock School Proprietor Podcast. I want to talk real quick about instructor training. Training is incredibly time-consuming, and it's actually something I used to avoid because of it. I'd hire a new guitar instructor and basically cross my fingers, hoping for the best. That strategy, or lack of strategy, just wasn't sustainable. My goal now is providing staff with the right tools to teach effectively and feel confident. When I published Complete Guitar Strumming, I did all the hard, time-consuming work in the front end. Along with the book, I've created a free instructor companion guide and training videos to help new instructors learn the material quickly and teach with confidence. These are the exact same training tools I use, and anyone using the book gets access to them. So you don't need to spend hours training your guitar instructors. I've done the heavy lifting for you. Visit rockschoolproprietor.com/book for all the details. Welcome to Rock School Proprietor Podcast. My name is John Kazicki.
And I'm Mandy York.
Mandy, let me ask you, have you ever had your studio featured in a newspaper or maybe on TV or magazine or anything like that?
You know, once, long ago, this was in the beginning, my first 3 or 4 years, I had someone from the local paper come out and watch one of my classes and take photos, and they did it right up in the local paper. It was when we were collaborating with a local senior center or assisted living center.
Nice.
Yeah.
Was that, do you remember what type of publication that was? Was it a local paper?
Yeah, it was the local paper back when we had one. Unfortunately.
So, yeah, the small, like, community
Times.
paper. Yeah.
Community paper.
Right. Which, yeah, it's a bummer that those are fewer and far between these days.
Sure.
I think you know this. I used to work prior to opening a music school. One of the jobs that I had, I was a publicist. And part of my job was writing press releases and contacting reporters and news outlets to try and get our clients featured on TV or in the paper, magazines, all those things. So I thought what we would talk about today is how to get coverage for your music studio in the paper, or how to write a press release and talk about all that stuff. What do you think?
I love this. Oh, that's a great idea. And I'm anxious to learn from you because I am not good at this.
Well, yeah, and I will say it has been a long time since I worked as a publicist. And I'll also say when I started as a publicist, there was no social media. So, I mean, maybe there was, but not like it is today. And there were more news outlets. There were more newspapers. There were more community magazines. So things have changed, certainly, but I still dust off my PR hat on occasion and write press releases for my studio. And I thought, you know what, this might be helpful for other studio owners. So the coverage that I've gotten for my studio, I've been in smaller community newspapers like the one you mentioned, larger papers like we're in Michigan, in Metro Detroit area. So I've been featured in the Detroit News and Free Press, some local entertainment magazines, and also on the local news, which is like, that's kind of like that's what you shoot for, right? That's the big one you really hope for. Did you see any benefits when your studio was in that publication? Do you remember noticing any benefits or not?
Yeah, for sure. So there was more social media, and so the publication went out, and then they post these articles online, right? And that's really great because you get a broader audience seeing your business and your presence on social media. More clicks, more likes, more sharing. So that was really cool. You know, our metrics that month when the article went out were like way up on social channels.
Yeah, I think it's probably important to keep in mind that I generally think of this type of thing as marketing, not advertising, right? And I think there's an important distinction to make for anyone who might not be as tuned into it, because oftentimes when we're running our businesses, maybe we launch a new class or something, and we're thinking like, I've got to get more people in this class. How can I get the word out, right? And that's kind of like, yeah, possibly this route with publicity, but that's more of an advertising thing, I think. And so when you get featured in a newspaper or a magazine or something like that, I think of that as more big picture marketing. That's the long game, not the short game. Yes, I think you'll get some initial visibility, a little bit of a bump in visibility, but I also think that there's going to be more long-term gain with additional credibility for your studio and name recognition, because those things are going to live online forever. Improved SEO with links on news sites pointing back to your website. So those are all, I think, big picture, long-term positives. So I would caution anyone thinking about doing something like this, writing a press release in hopes of it being more of an advertising tactic, probably not the best approach.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know what you think about this. I think word of mouth is like the best thing for me, right? Word of mouth,
Yes.
like marketing. And to me, this kind of publicity is the ultimate word of mouth, right? It's putting it out there and people start talking and seeing it more.
Yes. Oh, I
Different than
saw this
advertising.
place in the newspaper last week. Or, oh, didn't I see this on a story shared in the community Facebook group or whatever? Yeah, exactly. That
recognition.
It promotes the word of mouth. It promotes brand recognition. So all of that stuff is, I think, where the benefit is going to come in with this. All right. So talked about the benefits. Now, if you were to do this again, right? So it sounds like you've done it once. If you were to do it again, what questions do you have? Like if I'm playing like your publicist right now, Mandy.
Right. So I'll tell you what I did and then what I want to know. I was doing what I thought was this really cool thing where I had my studio, but once a week I would take a class into the assisted living senior center, once a week. And we did a class there. And I just thought it was so cool and so unique. And I thought people should know about it. So I wrote, I kind of wrote a press release, if you could call it that. I don't even remember how well written it was. And like I said, we had a local paper back then. And I sent it out to whatever contacts that I could find. I just searched online and found those contacts and sent that information out. And it wasn't immediate, but I did get an email back, and they asked when they could come in and do the thing. Now, I had something that I felt was newsworthy. Is that what you need? Or can you just write a generic press release? What is the content of that?
Yeah. You use the term newsworthy, and I think that's sort of key. Like, what is newsworthy, right? So I would say things like, because you're right. It's not just enough to be like, hey, we're this studio. This is what we do. Do you want to come write an article about us?
Yeah.
For better or worse, like we work in the entertainment industry, right? We're musicians. Is an audience going to be interested in just kind of a random story? As much as we think we're great, right? Probably not. But you were doing something unique. And on top of that, you were involved in the community, right? So that's more newsworthy than, hey, I'm the studio and I work with kids, right? So things in my mind that I think are always like, yes, write a press release for if you're opening your studio. because then you're a new business that's coming into the community. If your studio is moving to a new, bigger location, write a press release for that. That's like a big thing. That's something new. Those would be great for community newspapers, maybe community blogs, if you have community blogs in the area. I mentioned community involvement. That's a big one. So one of the biggest features I got for my studio was during COVID. And what we did at the time was, with our band program, we were kind of stuck. What could we do? We can't get together and have band rehearsals. So I hatched this plan. We shifted everything online. And in these online band rehearsals that we were having, we taught the kids how to record at home. So they recorded their tracks and then they sent them back to us. And then we edited everything. We put out an entire album. And we also implemented a charitable aspect to that album. So when we released the album, people could buy it and a portion of the proceeds went to charity. That is newsworthy, right? Because number one, everyone's like, during COVID, everyone's like, what are we doing? How do we keep the kids engaged? How do we keep them from going nuts? How do we keep ourselves from going nuts, right? So this was a way that we were keeping the kids engaged. We set up this charitable aspect to it, so it's feel good. That's the type of stuff that the community sort of rallies around, and was able to get on 2 of our, Detroit news stations featured for that. So that's kind of one of those big examples where sort of put a lot of things together, and it created a newsworthy story. Maybe if you have been nominated for or won some awards, or students winning some big competitions, that might be newsworthy. Or if your studio is winning big competitions, things that are really setting your studio or your business apart from, just kind of your everyday stuff. I mean, I know a couple of studios who do like really, really big charitable things, like traveling to other countries and raising money. That kind of stuff might be newsworthy. Does that kind of help?
Yeah, definitely. Yep. Yeah, it makes me think, I could have been doing more of this probably. I've hosted like charity benefit concerts, or maybe our annual big concert in the park. I don't know. Yeah, it makes sense. You have to have a reason before you start writing a press release.
Yes.
Got it.
And keep in mind, there's this term, slow news day, right? So if it is a slow news day, meaning there's not other big things going on in the news, well, then the chances of your press release or whatever you're doing getting across the desk and a reporter or journalist seeing it or an editor seeing it are a little bit higher. I was working in PR during 9/11, and that day we went home because my boss was like, there's no way any of the news outlets are going to cover any of our stuff right now. May as well go home. Yeah. So that was a big news day, right?
Yeah.
Clearly. So there's something to be said for, I think, persistence, right? But timing and like how big your event is. So then the next thing I would say is, and you kind of did this a little bit in your situation, which media outlets, right? You got to find the right media outlets. Yes. So for us, I mean, this is an extreme example, and I don't think anyone would do this, but like take magazines, for instance. There are a lot of different magazines with a lot of different focuses. It wouldn't make any sense for us studio owners to send a press release to, say, like an outdoors magazine. You know what I mean? It's just like, It's not a good fit. It doesn't make any sense. So identify which media outlets would even consider featuring you, right? So for what we do, I always think about, well, obviously you've got potential, if there's like music related columns or things like that, there's potential there. In newspapers, you're going to be thinking about lifestyle sections because what
Yeah.
we do would kind of fall under lifestyle. Maybe business if it's related to your business moving into a new
Mm-hmm.
location or expanding or something like that.
Or an
Um,
award.
mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Similarly on TV, right? So you're going to want to identify which it's called a news desk, right? Like which news desk or which editor. So which department. You don't want to send you want to send the appropriate information to the appropriate person, or else it just
Mm-hmm.
won't get eyes on it.
Yes.
So you might want to do some research identifying which reporters cover, it's called a beat, right? Which reporters cover the beat that you work in. So lifestyle, or sometimes there's segments for locations.
Yeah.
And identify who are the journalists for that.
Okay. That seems tricky to me.
Okay.
I mean, back when I did this, I just stayed hyper local. I sent it out to just a handful of, local reporter email addresses that I could find.
Yeah.
How do you find these things? Any tips on how to find this kind of contact information?
You've got, honestly, you've got to be in tune with the outlet that you're targeting.
Okay.
Because if you don't read the paper, then you're not going to know what section would cover my business, right?
Yeah.
So I think you have to read the paper, or you have to subscribe to the paper or whatever, or you have to watch the news so that you have an idea of who to target, or maybe you subscribe to a specific local magazine. You have to understand in reading who they would be susceptible to cover also, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. Yeah. You have to do your
but-
homework. You can't just go to the website of the
Well,
Detroit Free Press necessarily.
You can
Okay.
start there, right? You can go to the website and look for contacts, but again, also reading columns and reading articles that are similar to what you do or what you're pitching will give you insight into which reporters cover that beat and which
Yes.
reporters would cover this type of story.
Because you'll probably be more successful if you can really narrow it down to these specific people rather than sending something off to contact@abc.com. Right?
Yeah. And even more so if you can find out who the editor is of that department, because those are usually the people who are going to make the decisions about what gets covered. Because the journalists themselves, sometimes they're assigned something. All right, you're going to go cover this. Sometimes they develop stories themselves. It varies.
All right. Okay.
Now, from there, you want to create a media list, because if this is something that you're going to do moving forward, it'd be great if you didn't have to go searching these websites every single time, because for people like us, we might have a really cool event that we're doing and we think it's newsworthy, this month. We might not have another reason to contact the news outlets for another 6 months, a year, right? So just create a little spreadsheet, name, email address, maybe website links, maybe social media links. And so that way, you can come back to it when you need to.
Smart.
So yes, you want to identify what's newsworthy. You're going to identify the media outlets. And then you did this, you can create your pitch.
Yeah.
Do you remember what you did when you got that coverage? What the headline was or anything like that for your press release?
I don't. I didn't, and I didn't. I'm sure I have it somewhere. I don't remember the headline, but it was just, I really played up the fact that we were, bridging generations and bringing the kids into the community. I knew what I was going for, and I focused in on those details.
Yeah, that's your hook, right? That's
my hook.
That's why someone would read it. What is interesting about it? So it's not just Miss Mandy's music classes. It's Miss Mandy who works with these toddlers and their caregivers and then they're going to go perform at the senior center. So, like you said, you're bridging these multiple generations with this event. Yeah, that's the hook. Exactly. Then you want to get into like what makes a good press release. I'm not going to get into all of that stuff because that's like the nuts and bolts, right? But the general, what I want to get across with this is make it as easy as possible for these journalists to basically read your press release, understand why it's a good story, and decide, yep, this is great. You don't want to leave them with other questions. They might have other questions, but you want to anticipate as much as possible. So that way, like, look, best case scenario, I remember when I was working in PR, the first time one of my press releases was printed in the newspaper word for word. And I was like, wait, they do that? So I had written the press release. It got to the journalist or the editor, I don't remember, and they just copy, paste, ran it. And so in my mind, I was like, oh, okay. That was a learning experience for me. That was me realizing, like, I see. If I just write the article for them, then they're more likely to print it, right?
Yeah.
So, and I don't expect like us business owners and studio owners to be able to think like a journalist and write a newspaper article, but we can get close. Right. So,
and, there are a lot of resources out there, too. Like, I know professional groups that I'm in, they talk about this a lot and they give tips. And there's places you can go on how to write a great press release.
Right. So research the format of a good press release so that when it comes across through email or whatever, it looks like what they're expecting to see. It looks professional. Way back in my day, the resource that I used was the Public Relations Writer's Handbook. I still have it. I'll be honest. I would expect, like, it probably, if it hasn't been updated, it probably would need an update at this point, because I want to say there probably wasn't much info about blogs and like social media in there, because that stuff just didn't exist. But I would say, like, look for some good resources for that. Again, you want to basically do as much work for the reporter or the journalist as possible. Write up a good boilerplate. Now, a boilerplate, do you know what a boilerplate is for a press release? It's basically like your about us. It's like maybe a paragraph that you put at the end of your press release that's kind of like the nuts and bolts of your business. What you do, where you're located, if you've won any awards. You want to cram that stuff in the boilerplate so that it doesn't take up space in the actual press release, in the article, right? You want to put all the good information about your hook and your pitch in the press release. All the nuts and bolts stuff, yes, they're going to want to know it, but that's what a boilerplate is. It's almost like a bio.
Yes.
And you might even want to write a bio for yourself as the studio owner, just as like additional, right? Let's see. What else? Oh, last one when it comes to your pitch. If you are sending photos, if you're sending any sort of media, videos, again, you want to do the work for these journalists. If you provide them with great photos that they can print or publish or put online, they're gonna be more inclined to use the photos that you provide, versus if they feel like they need something, then have to come back to you and say, hey, do you have any pictures of this? And, avoid that back and forth. We did a whole episode about great photos and hiring professional photographers for your studio. This is a perfect example of, why having those can be useful.
Yes. And as you say that, I'm thinking, heaven forbid they would use like a stock photo. You don't want that.
Right.
Have great photos. Get ahead of that. That's good advice.
Yeah. Or like in your case, you did these classes. If you had photos from doing those classes previously, how great would that be if you had a photo of, a 2-year-old with their parent, and then one of the seniors at the senior center, and then you're in the background. That's the kind of stuff that enhances the story when they have that visual. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Questions about press releases.
Okay. That was really helpful. How, do I need to be the squeaky wheel? Because what if I don't get a response, right? Because I imagine that happens pretty frequently, wouldn't it? I mean, I only heard back from one person. I mean, not that I threw out a really wide net. I just heard back from one person. Should I be worried about, becoming annoying with my press releases, or any advice on that?
I would say don't take it personally if you don't get a response.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's okay to follow up. Be respectful. Whoever you're sending this to, they have their job that they have to do. And it might not be personal, but they just might read your press release and might decide yeah, not right now. This isn't, we've got other stuff that we've got to run. Or they might read it and say oh, this is a good story, but we can't right now. Follow up with an email, follow up with, if you got phone call or a phone number, follow up with a phone call. Again, just kind of be respectful, offer value, right? So if you're presenting something good, if you're presenting value to them, that's a positive, but just don't expect oh, I wrote a press release. Now all these newspapers and all these outlets are going to print my story. They get a lot,
Yeah.
They get a lot of stuff. I think you can be persistent, but again, keep it relevant to whatever's going on, right? If you're berating people with stuff that's not newsworthy, well, then yeah, chances are they see the same stuff over and over again. I'm going to be interested,
Yeah.
So takes time, takes a little patience. But I thought, if anyone does have big events, and I don't mean your end of session concerts like we do, or, your recitals, not necessarily newsworthy, but something, bigger or out of the ordinary would be more newsworthy.
Yep. Again, that benefit concert where you're inviting the entire community in.
Yeah, or raising money for some sort of charity, right?
Yeah.
That's always a hook too. But yeah, I think relationships are, when you're considering this, you're building your network, you're building relationships, just like with anything. If you, so think about this, or if you are trying to present yourself as an authority on a specific subject, right? Well, then you're developing that relationship with these journalists, and they may think of you again in the future for certain things. This makes me think of our friend Michael Hemsworth, who was on the podcast. I wish I could remember the episode 40 something, and he wrote his book, right? And that was, I know he got on some local television stations for that book. So in that instance, Michael's presenting himself as an expert in learning and working with kids and parents. And that's what his book was about. So play the long game, right? It's not just about this one-time thing, but try and develop these relationships so that you can utilize them in the future when stuff does come up.
Great. Yeah, smart. Okay.
All right. Those are my 4 big points. Other questions or specifics from you? And are you ready to start utilizing press releases?
You can see my face
now?
My wheels are turning. Yeah, I'm this is something maybe not enough of us utilize. I think my next big thing, I should do something like this. I need to. And maybe I'll come to you, John, to read my draft.
Okay, yeah. I'm down. I'll do it.
Cool.
Okay, well, then we will wrap this episode of Rock School Proprietor podcast, and we'll talk next time. See you, Mandy.
All right. See ya. Thanks, John.
If you have topic suggestions or questions, please contact us at info@rockschoolproprietor.com. We'd love to hear from you and hear suggestions for future shows. We've put together some free resources for teachers and studio owners over at rockschoolproprietor.com and a private Facebook group called The Modern Music School. Please join us over there. On social, I'm at rock.school.proprietor on Instagram and John Kazicki on both LinkedIn and Blue Sky. Your ratings and reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify are always appreciated. And if you enjoyed the show and gain insight from our conversation, then we count that as a win. All we ask in return is that you pay it forward, and please share the show with someone you think needs to hear it.